welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks, and I'm joined by the Guy Fawkes to my Guy Moosey. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Justin, happy bonfire night. Are you a fan of a bonfire night?
I'm not. I have an anxious dog that hates fireworks, so that makes me anxious and makes me angry, irrationally angry at the thought of loud bangs going off in nearby gardens. I think it should be illegal, for being honest with you, fireworks.
Wow. I've got a 9-month-old puppy. Is he 9 months? No, he's even younger than that. 7 months. And he does not care. We've had a couple of fireworks over the past couple of days. Does not give a shit. He is just completely brazen to it.
Look at you, because it is an ordeal for everybody. So I feel for everyone who has a anxious dog who hates fireworks. We will come together and we will submit a thing for Parliament, and we will get them banned for everybody. We'll ruin everybody's weekend.
Well, good luck with that. And Justin, as everyone knows, you infamously always start every podcast with a good day.
Yeah.
And I was at a petrol station near Leicester the other day, and after I just paid for my petrol, the bloke after me walked up to the counter and unironically said, "Good day."
Wow.
And you're starting a trend is my conclusion of that.
It's catching on. I think everyone should greet everybody with a good day, because a hi, hello, they're all a bit bland. They don't really fill you with much happiness and
that's true.
joy.
That's true, isn't it? Because you walk up to a normal person, hello, doesn't inspire anything.
No.
Hi, doesn't inspire anything. Good day makes you look sophisticated. Looks like you're from the medieval times.
Yeah, and you can say it with some aplomb. You can say it with some enthusiasm, and at no point does it sound creepy or weird. You go, "Good day," and that's someone with a lot of energy. But you go, "Hi."
That sounded like you were ending a conversation after making a valid point. The way you just said "good day," then.
It's a flexible phrase. That's what we're getting here. You can't make a point and then say hi, hello, can you? But you can say "good day" and then walk off into the sunset, and then you look like an absolute boss.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to introduce "good day" into your lives. Let's see how it goes, shall we? Welcome to the number one championship podcast, the Second Tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Yes, plenty for us to talk about in the championship over the past week. And of course, a huge game at the King Power Stadium. We'll talk about that very shortly. Talk about Millwall, because their new manager is seemingly imminent, so more on that very shortly. And just the rest of the championship games from the weekend. We had 6 draws, which isn't ideal for Justin and I to have anything particularly interesting to say on those games, but we'll find a way, I can tell you that. I was having a look at the last 2 game weeks, and there was 1 draw in each of those game weeks. So for us to have 6 in this one is quite remarkable.
Like bloody buses.
Yeah, we'll have a jolly good time either way, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome along to the ride. And we'll kick things off with Leicester, who dropped points for just the second time this season after losing 1-0 to Leeds on Friday night. Jorginho Ruta with the goal. 3-word reviews here for Leeds from Zovic. Bodied them frauds. Catherine says, coming together nicely. Carl says, proved who's best. Eddie says, big statement win from a Leicester perspective. Greg says, wasn't good enough. Hayden says, Leeds too intense. And Justin, Leeds were just unbelievable, weren't they? We've mentioned a lot recently how we've seen more top gear, wow performances from Leeds than we have from Ipswich or Leicester. And this is one of those wow performances.
It really was. Scoreline wise, and I think reflection on play doesn't give you that indication, but it really was a wow performance from Leeds. And yeah, again, we're talking about top gear, and Leeds were in it. I think we saw Farke's experience come to the fore here over Enzo Maresca. Had to adapt his style, become more rigid, become more structured, and it worked a treat because on the counter, Leeds were exceptional. We were talking about quick transitions earlier on in the week for Leeds and how fast they can be, and Farke exploited that. They were fantastic over and over again. There was speed to their play and what they were trying to do throughout. And I thought the midfield two of Glenn Kamara and Ethan Ampadu they were so again structured and solid, and it didn't allow Leicester to really gain control in that midfield. Really, really good performance. I think a little bit more composure. Leeds probably could have scored 1 or 2 more. It was one of those types of games where the balance of chances fell in Leeds' favour, just lacked the end product.
Yeah, and they bullied Leicester. They really, really did. No one has come close, really, to making them look second best in a game this season before Leeds turned up and did that. And how? everyone was just fantastic. Of course, Jorginho Ruta got the goal. Somerville and James were causing all sorts of problems. Kamara and Ampadu in midfield ran the game. Joe Rodon, magnificent at the back. Probably my man of the match for me. And then even Ilhan Meslier in goal was needed as well. That save in the dying minutes, incredible. And this was yet another example of Leeds being frighteningly good. And we've seen it plenty of times in recent weeks. On form, they're arguably the best side in the league, which is quite the statement considering how well the top two have started the season.
Yeah.
But Leeds are just breathtaking when they're in the mood, like they were. Leicester, on the other hand, this was one of those games where they were still just in second gear. Now, what has usually happened this season is they've been able to get in that gear, but their overwhelming quality has just been too much for the opposition. But when they meet a side with similar levels of quality, it doesn't work. And that's what we saw here, because they were well below par.
Yeah, it was a frustrating and disappointing performance, because again, you're looking at a team it's a real big test for Leicester, and they didn't really come out of it with too many high marks from my perspective, and it is just one defeat. But it was a second gear performance, as you mentioned, and you need those types of games to learn from. Leicester have been near perfect this season in terms of results, and performances have been slowly elevating upwards to where they need to be a validated title contender / winner. You've got to take a punch sometimes, and that's how it is. But for me, this was a real test, and they failed the first real test of the season. No disrespect to any other teams they've faced so far, but talking about Daniel Farke getting one over Maresca, he did, and Leicester rarely threatened throughout the game. That Kennedy reward the shot or header save from Ilhan Meslier towards the end of the game, and that was about it. Didn't create enough chances on the balance of possession, and Leeds were very comfortable out of possession. That's more of a damning statement towards Leicester.
Well, prior to this result, I think everyone was coming to the conclusion that Leicester will quite easily get promoted, even if we're just a quarter of the way through the season. So how much has this result upset the apple cart, Justin? Has the apple cart been slightly nudged? Is it wobbling, or has one of its wheels come off, leaving apples everywhere? What do you think?
I think it's more of, when you get a trolley at the supermarket and the wheel's jammed, and it's really bloody annoying because you're trying to get a nice push on it and it just keeps snagging a little bit and it's a bit bumpy. I think that's all it is. It's just a little bit of a bumpy cart they've got at the moment. I think once they fix those issues that they faced against Leeds, they will go again. It's all about learning from the disappointments that they've had. You're not going to come up against a team like Leeds too often this season, are you? You're going to come up against them twice. So judging by that logic, it's 3 defeats all season. It's not bad, is it? Yeah, they're still going to romp the league based on the maths of what we had. But on a more serious note, I think if you ask me that same question after the next game, seeing how they react, then we'll be able to have a decent assessment of it. It's all about reaction, and that going into that next game next week, that's where they've got to come up.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if it's a snag on the trolley, to be honest, Justin. I would still be very surprised if Leicester didn't win the league at a canter. I think something would have to go horrendously wrong from a Leicester perspective for them to not finish first. Their quality just shines through so often, and 95% of championship teams simply can't match it. Yeah. So you've got Leeds, on the other hand, who are obviously relying on several other teams doing them favours to stop that from happening, which I just don't think is too realistic as things stand. Ipswich are the one, aren't they? If Leeds were armed with a sniper right now, they'd have much more chance hitting a tractor than a fox. Didn't know where I was going with that analogy when I started it, but in summary, if they're going to catch anyone, it's going to be Ipswich, isn't it?
Well, obviously, yes, but I still wouldn't rule out Leeds somehow catching up with Leicester, because we've seen the quality that they've got. It's just about generating consistency in those games where, like the Sheffield Wednesday game, like the was it the Rotherham game as well, where they just weren't quite at it, and they get
11
punished.
points behind already. That's a lot of ground to make up, isn't it?
It's a lot of ground to make up, but we're only a quarter of the way through the season. We've still got a lot of games left to play.
But you're asking, you're asking Leicester to drop a lot of points, considering they've only dropped 6 points all season, and Leeds to essentially win virtually every game in that time, which just doesn't seem like that's realistic.
It's probably not realistic, but this is what I mean. I think Leeds have got the quality to do it, and they've got the manager who's got the experience of doing it. So why not? Again, this could be a spark of a bad turn in form for Leicester. You can't rule anything out. They've not drawn games, not had a run of games where they've drawn, and I think Leeds have just set a blueprint on how to play against Leicester City, which might make games coming up a little bit more uncomfortable, because there are plenty of teams in the division that will look at this game and go, right, okay, that's a smart move there, Daniel Farke. I'll copy and paste that one, and then get results. There's a lot of if, buts and maybes, certainly, but that's the Championship.
I'm not sure about that myself. As I keep saying, the big obstacle for Leeds is just going to be consistent, because assuming Ipswich beat Rotherham on Tuesday night, that'll open up a 10-point gap, which is huge at this stage in the season. And I mean, we talk about how many points Leicester have dropped so far. Ipswich have only dropped 7 points this season themselves. So I'm sure Ipswich will have the odd dip or two over the course of the season, but I don't think there'll be a massive drop-off. So whoever they're going to catch, Leeds need to produce some mad consistency for the remainder of the season. And by that I mean this Leicester performance, essentially week in, week out, over several games in a row. They can't afford many results like losing to Stoke a couple of weeks ago. So that's what they've got to do, and it's a big task, but if they want to stand any chance of getting in the top two, that's what they're going to have to do, because the consistency of this current top two is just frighteningly good. So that it's a high standard that is being set by them, and Leeds have to match it, or better it in this case. A 93rd minute winner from Ryan Fraser saw Southampton win 1-0 away at Millwall. Westie's 3-word review: patient, pressure, success. And there were great limbs here from the travelling Southampton supporters, which included James Beattie. How about that, eh? I would like to see more former players celebrating in away ends, Justin.
Yeah, we do need to see more of it. I think I'm trying to think off the top of my head now if we have had any previously. Certainly probably has been, but James Beattie was a surprise, because he's quite a renowned coach within the EFL structure. I know he was at Wigan. He's not there anymore, is he? But he was at Wigan this time last year.
He was at Birmingham as well, wasn't he? Birmingham.
Yeah, under Gary Monk.
Leeds as well, I think. Yeah.
So he's solidified EFL coach, and he's seen in the away end. He's got to love it. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah. I just think drafting a random former player every away game, and then it's just a case of spot the player in the crowd, and then go, oh look, it's him. Like, get Marek Saganowski in there or something like that. Just any former Southampton player. Yeah, just really mix it up each week. I'd love to see that. 17 points from a possible 21 for Southampton now. They remain fourth, and I tell you what, Justin, just talking about Leeds potentially crashing the promotion party, don't underestimate Southampton. They could quite easily sneak in the back door if you don't keep it locked.
Yeah, it's always good to sneak in the back door, isn't it? And it certainly could. It was another good display. It was a display that, again, it's a roll your sleeves up, grind it out sort of one, because they dominated possession, obviously. I'm going to go back to it, but they just like that cutting edge we spoke about so long ago. They had a lot of chances, they didn't take them, but again, the key thing here is they kept going, and they kept Millwall at arm's length, which is a big thing. And another thing that impressed me is Russell Martin making those small tactical changes within games to get more out of his side when they're not quite at the races. And he got players coming on off the bench making impacts, like Ryan Fraser scoring another last-minute winner. Yeah, as far as super subs go, he's up there, isn't he? So yeah, it's another fantastic, well, not fantastic, but a good display, a good away display. Tough place to go. It's a clean sheet, and it's confidence all round.
Well, the thing is, for me, Southampton seem to be getting better at a progressive rate, and if that continues, then they could be an exceptional side in the final few months of the season. We all know they have an unbelievable amount of talent anyway, and it's just been about getting the most out of them, knitting it all together, and Russell Martin seems to be doing that. They're getting more and more solid at the back. I mean, Millwall was only their second clean sheet since March, so they're definitely making a lot of progress in that respect. I think Taylor Harwood-Bellis coming in has really solidified things there. The Mercedes defender. There's only 1 point behind Leeds as well, so as long as they stay within touching distance of them, anything's possible. It's kind of like them riding in Leeds' slipstream.
Yeah, again, sneaking in essentially, aren't they? They are quietly going about it, because I think at first glance you probably still expect Southampton to be in and around the playoffs, but actually they're well in there, and you expect them to be because of the quality of player that they've got, and they had a few bumps earlier on in the season, but they rode through it. They rode through it quite nicely. Obviously, it needs a slipstream, which is a big positive. But they're a side for me that are only going to get better because they got quality players. They got Ross Stewart to come in. I would expect them to strengthen in January as well. Again, Mason Holgate is settled. We've forgotten about him in a good way because there was quite a few high-profile mistakes. He's settled. Shea Charles is still coming into things as well as a young player. So for me, they're a team that's only going to improve from here.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think we're getting a top four forming now? Justin, Leicester and Ipswich still make up the top two, and then you've got Leeds and Southampton a few points behind. But at this stage, I think I'd be quite surprised if this wasn't the top four in some order come May. I know we talked before about the top three most likely being Leicester, Ipswich and Leeds in some order. At the time, Southampton weren't playing very well, but have now gained ground. So what are we thinking?
I still think there's a Sunderland and West Brom that might want to be in the conversation. I don't think we're seeing the best of Sunderland in terms of results. That's expected. They've got a young squad. They still are without that clinical forward that they so desperately need. And West Brom they just keep clean sheets, and clean sheets they drag you up the league one way or another. So they're two teams for me that are going to be in that conversation that might mix up that order. But again, it just depends how consistent Leeds and Southampton can stay.
I'm not sure. I think I would struggle to see Sunderland, West Brom, Middlesbrough, any of them managing to break this top four that seems to be forming. I don't think it will necessarily be in the same order that it is now, but I struggle to just see anyone matching the consistency first and foremost, let alone the quality. I still think there's a distinct possibility that we see the same top three we spoke about before, and Southampton are left in a category of their own where they're too good for everyone else but struggle to match the brilliance of the top three, just because I've seen a lot more from the top three than I have from them, and their promotion hopes rely on them getting progressively better as the season goes on. But for me, I could definitely see a top four forming just from how things are stat right now. Could all change quite quickly, but it just looks like these four are quite a way better than the rest of the division. Millwall perspective, Matt's 3-word review. I think this is in reference to Adam Barrett, the caretaker. Bold Gary Rowett. It's not going very well for Millwall, is it? Just 2 points from 4 games since parting company with Gary Rowett. They need a new manager sorting, don't they? Because they haven't played well at all under Barrett. It's kind of like when Creed is in charge of the office. You just get the sense that the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to get. However, we might not have to wait much longer because the Daily Mail is reporting that Joe Edwards is set to be appointed the new Millwall manager, a very highly regarded coach who also worked at Chelsea and Everton. What do you make of that, Justin?
It's an interesting one. I mean, you mentioned there he's clearly highly rated considering his experience at Chelsea. Took over the England under-20s in the summer, so you've got that experience of working with young players. Was on Frank Lampard's staff, which makes me a little bit hesitant. Lampard favoured a pressing style that was by and large poorly implemented, so not sure that's Joe Edwards' fault, but he clearly fits the criteria that Millwall are after, that front foot football. Got experience of working with youngsters, and hopefully will have contacts from his Chelsea days as well. So yeah, there's a lot of ticks in the box. It's just that inexperience that might make me a little bit more hesitant. But if you compare them to maybe like a Bristol City, for example, I think Millwall are they're in that process, whereas I think Bristol City are at the end of the process in terms of where they go next. I think Millwall are building once again, whereas Bristol City want to make an appointment to get themselves into the top 6. Whereas Millwall want to get a manager, nurture him, get them further up than what Gary Rowett delivered.
I'm not sure inexperience is necessarily that much of a factor anymore, Justin, because you look at... I mean, I've made my feelings known about this plenty of times, because if I was in charge of a stable championship club, my first appointment would be to get a young coach in like Joe Edwards, because why not have a gamble? It's worked for Ipswich and Middlesbrough, getting in Kieran McKenna and Michael Carrick, and then Steve Cooper's another one who I cast my mind back to, who was in a similar position to Edwards, actually, wasn't he? He was in the England setup, and it's all worked wonders. You're starting to see now a trend of clubs taking gambles on managers like this and it working more often than not, because they're young coaches who are just waiting for their chance in management, and when it comes along they're willing to give it 110%. And I think Edwards is in the same category, so I don't understand why more clubs don't go down this route, because it just seems to makes sense. Don't know what Edwards is going to be like in terms of his style of play. I imagine Millwall fans will quite like it to be what they're used to, which is direct. Don't know if Edwards wants to go down there, but as long as he's winning games, I don't think Millwall fans will care. So I think this is a smart appointment. Could be a masterstroke, or it might not work. If it doesn't work, who cares? Millwall aren't going to go down, are they? They just start again and get someone else in. So, yeah, take a gamble on someone like Edwards. I think this is a very smart move by Millwall.
Yeah,
the Sunday afternoon... What was that?
You're nonchalant.
Why am I nonchalant, Justin?
I think it's, it does matter, I think, for Millwall. I really do.
Right,
because
then, let's get in someone like Dean Smith or something like that. It's just that kind of way of going about it, Justin, is so archaic, I think. And I think you're kind of living in the past if you think we shouldn't go down the route of getting in a young, ambitious coach. Because look at McKenna, look at Carrick. You probably thought they were bad appointments.
I don't think they were bad appointments. They just come with risk. And I think when you've got...
Of course they come with the risk, but that's my point. They may as well take a gamble, might they?
Well, again, but it's a gamble in which Millwall, I think, are in a prime position to really kick on, to really kick on and be a top six club. And I think you're taking not an unnecessary gamble, but a gamble that doesn't have to be made, because I think Nathan Jones could deliver that. Probably more so likely to do it than someone like Joe Edwards, who comes with the risk. He's coming from a shadow of Frank Lampard.
Yeah, but Justin, he could be a tactical genius for all you know. You had your doubts about Enzo Maresca. Look how that's going.
Yeah, you can go in with doubts, but again, we're seeing Maresca here, who was out tacticked by Daniel Farke, someone who you didn't rank quite highly.
He's top of the league, having only dropped points in 2 games all season. That's not a very good example that you put in there.
No, but what I'm saying is, if we're talking about tactical genius, I don't think Maresca is up there yet. And again, we're sort of devoid from the point.
Who cares? They're top of the league with the best start after 15 games in Championship history. What is your point?
We've been sidetracked here. My point is, it's a risk for Joe Edwards. It's a risk to go for Joe Edwards when you've got Nathan Jones.
I know it's a risk, Justin, but they may as well take it, might they? Because he could be an unbelievable manager. He's a young coach. You got to, as I was just saying, these appointments in recent times have worked more often than they've not.
Yeah, and I'm just sat on the side of the fence where I'd rather go for someone like Nathan Jones, who has a similar thought in style of play, fits the criteria in the bill, ticks every box for me. I'd rather go for someone like him. It's just a difference of opinion. I don't think it's wrong or right.
Yeah, but if you went down your routes, then we'd just be appointing the same managers all the time, like your Gary Rowett's, your Nathan Joneses, your Dean Smiths, those kind of guys.
I don't think so. It
sounds like it, because you'd never take a risk on a young coach, and we'd just be stuck with the same managers in the same cycle.
No, that's not necessarily true. Again, I think there are times to take a risk, and there are times there aren't. I don't think Millwall need to.
Unbelievable. All the evidence about taking risks on young managers, and you're still sticking with, we should get someone in like Gary Rowett. Obviously, they won't get in Gary Rowett because they've just sacked him. Well, departed company with him, rather. But Kieran McKenna, Michael Carrick, and you still think that's not the way to go down. I can't believe it. Anyway, let's move on to the Sunday afternoon game, which finished Norwich 1, Blackburn 3. Norwich were down to 2-0 down after 15 minutes, and the boos when that second goal went in were deafening. Plenty of chants from Norwich fans as well. Stuart Webber, get out of my club, you're getting sacked in the morning. I couldn't really tell whether it was Norwich fans or Blackburn fans, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point if it was Norwich fans. 1 point from 6 games, and I think this is probably the end for David Wagner, isn't it?
It probably should be, but again, you've got to feel for the guy, because he's been given a daft hand, and you've got nobody from the club stepping up and making any comments, because I mentioned it in midweek, who's running the football club. I made the joke about David Wagner being unsackable because there's nobody in charge of the football club. I know Sky alluded to it. Neil Adams is there as a technical director, but is he going to make a decision on the future of the next manager? I don't know. I think your best bet is to get in a caretaker and let them see through this weird phase they're going to be in, because it's clearly not working. The players, it feels like they've not down tools, but they're not working as hard as they could be out of possession. And David Wagner's team's just far too easy to cut through. Blackburn were good, but Norwich made them look even better.
I think you're absolutely spot on there, Justin. Norwich are just an absolute shambles at the back, and it's somehow seemingly getting worse. I thought the first goal from a Blackburn perspective was really good, but it was just so easy at the same time. And this is why a change has got to be made, because 1 point from 6 games, this has got to be the end of the David Wagner era. It's getting into the Gareth Ainsworth territory of how hasn't he been sacked yet, because it's getting worse and worse. There doesn't seem to be any sign that things are going to turn, and even though there's no one in charge of the club now from a sporting director point of view, well, Stuart Webber is, but I'd be surprised if he made any massive decisions. He might have to make a massive decision, because this is just so blatantly obvious that a change is needed.
It needs to be done, and like I said, I think your best bet is to employ a caretaker, because it's just not working under David Wagner for whatever reason. I do think personnel-wise there's a massive imbalance, because Kenny McLean isn't your ball-winning midfielder. He's someone you play through. Gabriel Sara is your playmaker. There's not a lot of steel in this midfield, and obviously from a personnel point of view, there's not a lot of depth in defence either. There's a lot of issues that needed to be addressed in the summer, and it wasn't. Unfortunately, that goes to Stuart Webber for whatever reason. Again, didn't happen. It's just a really bizarre situation Norwich have found themselves in. We've mentioned it so many times. You mentioned it so many times. We're banging the same drum. Club needed a reset in the summer. Got a bit of flirted with one, and that was it. And unfortunately, David Wagner is now leading a team that is just not capable of leading. Unfortunately,
yeah, he doesn't know how to get the best out of it, and he's thankful. He's lucky, really, that he's got Gabriel Sara, because if he didn't have him, I don't know where Norwich would be this season. I'm not sure they would have even had that good start to the season that they had, which feels like a long, long time ago now, doesn't it? Even though it was just a matter of weeks ago. So yeah, a change has got to be made. I've made my thoughts known about David Wagner plenty of times. I think a change should be made in the summer, to be quite honest. So now we're at this stage where things are looking really, really bad for Norwich, and if a change isn't made, they could be dragged into a relegation battle. And I think I agree with you. It's at the stage now where you're best off just sticking with a caretaker for the foreseeable and waiting until Ben Napper comes in, the new sporting director, and then make an appointment then, because right now it's just spiralling out of control, isn't it? Let's talk Blackburn though. Let's give them some credit, because Sammy Szmodic scored twice, and he is having a brilliant season, isn't he? 9 goals, now joint top goal scorer in the league. He only managed 11 goals over the previous 2 championship seasons, so he is having a storming season, isn't he?
Yeah, he's been brilliant. He's got 9 in 15 now and 2 assists. It's obviously a fantastic return, but his work rate and his movement now are exceptional. I think this is the crazy thing, he could be more clinical. He has missed some big chances throughout this season, and I know it's a bit of a critique in what we're trying to do is trying to praise him, but I think it just speaks to the volume of chances that Blackburn are creating, and also the improvement that Sammy Szmodic has had in front of goal this season. He scored some spectacular goals last season, but a lot of his goals this year have been, sort of shimmying off to the left and coming inside and sliding into the far right corner. And that sort of movement, that repetition, quite ironically, is something that Timo Pukki scored a lot of goals doing. And I'm not trying to compare them, but it's just that quality of movement is so important. And you've got creative players like Andrew Moran in the team. Tyrese Dolan was on fire in this game as well, really active. He's going to get chances. And he's taking them. And it's a key thing. He's a pivotal cog in this team that I rate much more higher than last season.
Yeah, and they've had plenty of injuries as well of Blackburn, so Szmodic has had to be a bit flexible with where he's playing. Sometimes he's playing in midfield, sometimes he's playing up front, sometimes he's kind of a fluid false 9, but wherever it is, he's just been playing out of his skin this season, and that's why Blackburn are just so frighteningly good going forward. Still a bit leaky at the back, but going forwards they have been irresistible at times this season. Justin, let's take a quick break. After that we'll talk about Bristol City and their first win since sacking Nigel Pearson, as well as Martí Cifuentes' first game in charge of QPR. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. Bristol City won their first game since sacking Nigel Pearson. They beat Sheffield Wednesday 1-0. Aaron's 3-word review for Wednesday. Referees are useless. And I assume what he's referring to there is Wednesday going down to 10 men for 2/3 of the game after Barry Bownen was given a straight red. I can't make my mind up on this one, Justin. It seems to be quite a divisive decision on social media as well. Do you think it was a red?
I don't think it was. You've got 2 players there. You've got the goalkeeper, firstly, in a good position to stop the shot, and then you've got the defender who's covering as well. It's a cynical trip. You're definitely yellow carded. Whether or not it's in the box or outside the box is another debate, but it's certainly not a red from me. It's not a clear and obvious opportunity, which is what it comes down to. I think the rules change every day, but yeah, definitely not a red. I think the referee will be disappointed in that decision. I'll be honest.
I'm not sure I agree. I'm struggling to 100% make my mind upon it, but I think it's more of a red than not a red, and I think that's because he was sent off for denying a clear goal-scoring opportunity.
Clear there.
And why wasn't it? He was
Because you had two players there, the goalkeeper and the defender to beat.
Well, the goalkeeper is the goalkeeper, so it's 1-on-1. But then the defender, for some reason, was behind the goalkeeper, and is he really going to affect things that much? So
I think he's made the target smaller. That's what it is. It's not clear and obvious.
Yeah, I'm not sure he has. I'm not sure I agree with that at all, Justin. I think by the letter of the law, it's probably the right call. I didn't think it was a penalty, by the way. I thought it was outside the box, but I think it probably was the right decision to send him off for that. Just Bristol City's third win in 8, so a good 3 points for them under caretaker boss Curtis Fleming. Rumours continue to circulate around who the potential new manager could be, and have you seen the odds on who the favourite is with the bookies, Justin?
You're just throwing that little spark in there, aren't you? Because you know what's going to come next.
Yep. It's your friend and mine, old Frankie Lampard. And Justin, you're a big fan of his, aren't you?
Oh, love him. He's my favourite gaffer in history of football. Of course, dear listeners, that is sarcasm through the grit of my teeth. I dislike Lampard as a manager so much, simply because he's not very good. Worst thing is he's not learned from any of his mistakes. Isolates players he doesn't want. His style of play that is heavily reliant on quality individuals is it's just not sustainable. And if he gets you into the playoff final, he will not start a fucking striker.
As you can tell, Justin is still quite bitter about a certain playoff final from Frank Lampard's Derby County days. If he does come in, at least we'd get to be on watch for any Lampard-isms, like, if only we sold a lad for 25 million in the summer so I can have some money to spend. No, but seriously, where's the Alex Scott money? That kind of thing is what I'm thinking. But if Lampard gets appointed, I'll take back everything I said on Nigel Pearson. I do not get the attraction for football clubs in appointing him. I think he actually underperformed with a very talented Derby team, failed at Chelsea, failed at Everton, failed at Chelsea again, and just look at him. When has he shown any tactical capability to take a club to the next level? At the end of the day, this may all just be rumours and have no truth to them whatsoever. However, I'll be flabbergasted if they went ahead and did this.
Flabbergasted, disappointed, angry. I'll be at the picket lines with Bristol City fans because I do not want to talk about Frank Lampard on this podcast as a manager. Frankly, because I said his name again. Mainly because it would just drive me insane. If I'm being honest with you, Ryan, he's not a good manager at all. He's not a good manager. I know it's quite easy for us to say it as these armchair podcasters, content creators, but the evidence stacks way against him. I think the only confidence you can take from it is John Lansdowne said that the bookie shortlist is so far from what they're looking at the moment. But again, I don't know. I just feel like it might happen.
Yeah, I can tell you're frustrated, Justin. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but I would be very, very disappointed if Bristol City went down this route. A decent showing by Sheffield Wednesday, despite being down to 10 men. I saw a video of the Wednesday fans chanting Danny Rule's name after the game. So on the pitch, the fans seem happier than they were. What about off the pitch? I hear you say. Well, reports this Sunday morning say Dejphon Chansiri has no plans to sell Sheffield Wednesday, even if they go straight back down. It comes after he told the fans to fund the £2 million the club needed to pay HMRC and wages. This was eventually paid by Chansiri, even though he said he was not putting any more money into the club. And Justin, the thing I can't get my head around is, what is Chansiri getting out of this to make him not want to sell? I genuinely do not understand it at all.
He's a weird guy. He's just a weird guy, isn't he? Sell the club. Clearly
just
doesn't
gets
make you
off
happy.
on, fans telling him that he's a knobhead.
Yeah, why keep something in your life that you clearly dislike and hate? It's just so toxic, Dejphon Chansiri. You might be a happier human being if you sold the football club and got rid of this clear burden on your mindset. You save so much time as well, because you have a Paddy every 4 or 5 weeks and tell us your life story and these ridiculous statements that are not in any way accurate. He's just an odd chap and quite clearly shouldn't be a football owner.
Yeah, well, he shouldn't be, and I don't get why he wants to continue being one. He's bleeding money and having to put in millions each month to keep things running, and he's not getting anything in return. No. So is he just genuinely doing it because he loves the club? Because the club certainly doesn't love him. And I just assumed when he put out that ridiculous statement last month about him not putting any more money into the club, that was the beginning of the end of Chansiri's reign, but apparently not. And it seems ridiculous that you want to hang around when the fans clearly don't want him there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just such a unique and odd scenario. And he will quite obviously, well, not quite obviously, I think in my opinion, will go down as one of the worst owners we've seen in Championship history that hasn't plunged the club into administration. Because it's there's just no love there. There's no love. There's no interest. The fans don't like you. You don't like the fans. What is the point in all of this? And I think that's a question that only Chansiri can answer. What is the point? You're not making any money. Where are we going? Nowhere.
Well, he'll say it's because he loves the club.
No,
but
he doesn't.
Does he?
No.
Why would he?
If he loved the club, he'd bloody move to Sheffield and follow it, every week. But he doesn't. He arrives every now and then. Rarely speaks to the media and releases these ridiculous
I think he speaks to the media too much, if I'm quite honest, because that's one of the big issues here. I think if he genuinely does love the club like he claims to do, just sell, because that's what will be the best for him and the club, because Wednesday can't progress until Chansiri's gone, and we're not going to get anywhere until a change happens. In a huge game at the bottom of the table, Rotherham and QPR drew 1-1 in Marty Cifuentes' first game in charge of QPR. Kurt's 3-word review for QPR: much improved, promising, mysterious Cifuentes says, finally playing football. It's a result which doesn't really suit either side in the fight to stay up, to be quite honest, and Marty Cifuentes says he wasn't happy with the result. He would have been happy with Elias Chair's goal, I assume, because that was a beauty. It was funny because you had 2 QPR players screaming at him to pass it, and then he power drives it into the top corner. Beautiful. What do we think of the new QPR, Justin, on this first viewing?
Yeah, there was obvious progression. Passing-wise, they were much better. They tried to play. There was more emphasis on being a little bit braver, especially getting into the final third. It looked like there was work done on the training ground to get the team playing forwards. Missed some big chances as well and conceded a poor goal. But I would say the blocks are solid under Cifuentes. I think he'd be content with the performance, but not the result. In terms of, he's only had a few days with the team, so to transition their style of play as heavily as they need to, I think he'd be quite content with where things are going. Similarly with QPR fans, I was content. Be nice to see them progress.
Yeah, and he's only been there for 3 or 4 days prior to this, so I don't think we can really judge anything on this game at all, but you can see they have more of a game plan than they did under Gareth Ainsworth. Yes. To be fair, any semblance of a game plan is probably more than what Gareth Ainsworth had to offer. I still have my concerns about the appointment, but this new manager is definitely going to be much better suited to the likes of Elias Chair and Chris Willock, without a doubt, isn't he? So getting a tune out of them has to be the priority, because they're easily the most talented players in this QPR squad, probably some of the most talented players in the bottom 4 or 5 teams in the division. So that would be a very good start, but a lot of work to do to give them a chance of staying up, without a doubt. Birmingham got their first point under Wayne Rooney. They drew 2-2 with Ipswich in what was probably the coupon buster of the weekend. Birmingham forwards 3-word review: 2 points dropped, and that's because Birmingham are 2-0 up here and should have won this if it wasn't for 2 late goals from Marcus Harness. So strange, because it would be disappointing that they dropped the lead, but they would have taken a point before the game. Yeah. So I see this as progress ultimately, Justin.
It was definitely a step in the right direction. I think what it came down to is Ipswich showed that why they're on top, why they're where they are. First off was a massive improvement on the first 3 games under Rooney, and definitely we saw Birmingham at their best. They pressed hard, they got players forward and forced Ipswich into a lot of mistakes, but second half just shows you there's a lot of work to do. I think that drop-off meant Ipswich smelt blood, took the onus and went with it. One other point I want to make is Jay Stansfield looks like that comedian Carl Porter. You know, the guy who did the slow motion celebration. The resemblance is uncanny. It's quite staggering, really.
Yeah, I can't really remember who Carl Porter is. Apart from that one video that was on everyone's timelines for like 2 days, and then I've never heard of him again since. But it's a good shout, Justin. I think Jay Stansfield has been excellent since Rooney's come in. He's been one person who's definitely benefited from this, probably the most actually. So while it's not been a great start for Birmingham in general, Stansfield is definitely someone who is enjoying life under him. One thing I am concerned about is I saw a lot of similarities to Wayne Rooney's Derby, and that similarity in particular that I'm concerned about is them sitting back and inviting pressure after going 2-0 up.
Yeah.
It had very mixed results at Derby and led to them dropping a lot of points. But look, they've become just the third team to take points off Ipswich this season. So before that, they looked miles off winning a game. So for them to be 2-0 up against one of the best teams in the league is a huge positive. So I think Rooney is finally getting somewhere with Birmingham. 3-word reviews here from Robert on Ipswich. Comeback kings again. James says Ipswich are human. He was interested to hear Kieran McKenna say after the game that he planned for Birmingham to drop off. So not only is he a tactical genius, he's also Mystic Meg. Judging from that comment, Mystic Ken. But it is just the third time Ipswich have dropped points this season, which is just a mind-blowing record. They've conceded quite a few goals recently, though. 2 clean sheets in 7. 10 goals conceded in that time. Could be a lot better. West Brom made it 3 wins on the bounce by beating Hull 3-1. Andrew's 3-word review. The return of Grady. And John says Corberan masterclass. Another cracking win for Carlos Corberan's boys, who continue to look very good. And I keep saying they're going under the radar, so much so that they can't keep going under the radar because I keep saying it so much. But I think they're looking more and more like the real deal, Justin.
Yeah, it's like Ollie Norwood syndrome, isn't it? Where you underrate him so much to the point where you underrated him, that everyone's underrated him, and now he's getting so much conversation around him. And it's the same with West Brom. They're floating under the radar so much to the point where everyone's saying it, and everyone's pointing the finger at them. And look, they're coming into it at the right time. Players are hitting form as well. We mentioned Grady Diangana in midweek, back 2 assists, and it was a menace of a Hull. He's crossed for Ajayi. Was a player with confidence, and you've got several players with confidence. But again, what impressed me here was West Brom's press. They showed that with the forcing Jean-Michel Seri into that error for the first goal. They're very good at controlling games without dominating possession. There are ways to dominate games, and Corberan is a master of football without the ball, and that can be the catalyst for a top 6 push and a top 6 finish. And you just wouldn't rule it out because they're just very good, very efficient defensively. They're a very unique side under Corberan.
Yeah, they're one of the best teams defensively in the division. 6 clean sheets in 8 games now. And I feel like they're much more likely to get a top 6 place if they're extremely solid at the back. Yeah. And that's why I think there's lots of parallels here with this West Brom team and Corberan's Huddersfield, because that defensive solidity and just being efficient up the other end. I think the main difference between those two teams is that he's got better players at his disposal now. Sure. Of course, Huddersfield had a lot of talent in that team, but I think that was mainly down to the manager getting the best out of them. Now Corberan's doing it with players who at various points have been some of the best in the division in the last few years. A key example of that is Grady Diangana, who looks reborn. We're witnessing the redemption arc of Diangana in front of our very eyes. But getting the best out of these players is a lot easier said than done, because a lot of them have struggled for a while, particularly Diangana. And that's why what Corberan is doing is so special. So how realistic a possibility do you think top 6 is for them, Justin?
Like I said, I'll bang this drum again about keeping clean sheets, being defensively strong. That gets you such a long way in the Championship, and as long as you can control games without dominating possession, dominating without possession, I think that's going to stand them in good stead. So for me, I mentioned West Brom possibly knocking on the door of the top 4. Can't rule it out because they've got quality. They've got Dawo Dike to come back in. I think the only thing that could hold them back is the ownership problems. You know, if they've got to sell players in January to make ends meet for the rest of the season, that can be the harmful aspect to West Brom's top 6 push. But as long as that sails relatively smoothly, I would place them quite comfortably in the top 6.
Yeah, I wouldn't say quite comfortably. Still very early days, long way to go, but they're certainly well in the conversation. I think one issue is it looks like we have a top 4 forming already, so you've potentially got just 2 places being fought over by quite a few teams. Whatever the case, I've been very impressed recently with West Brom, and they're certainly one to keep an eye on. Start of the season, I would have given them very little chance of getting in the top 6 because of the issues off the field and the fact that their squad actually looks weaker compared to how it was last season. So for them to be at this stage right now is pretty remarkable. Game of the weekend came at Home Park, where Plymouth and Middlesbrough drew 3-3, both sides taking the lead at some point in this one, and it was just a cracker. Two very enjoyable teams to watch, and both very good going forwards. A beautiful goal by Finn Azaz. That was the best of the bunch. A lovely finish, curling from outside the box. Good to see Josh Coburn get on the score sheet as well. He's had a bit of a mixed time in front of goals, so he's someone I want to do well because I rate him quite highly. Did you see Plymouth owner Simon Hallett has been speaking to the BBC this week, Justin? He says he's aiming for the club to be a top 6 championship side by 2028. Will they do it, Justin?
I think so. I think maybe they can do it before then. The structure off the pitch is fantastic. They invest in the right players, the right ages, and then they're a club in a good position, I think, to be competing for a place in the Premier League at some point this decade. I know it's a long way, we've got 7 years till 2030, but I just wouldn't rule it out because, again, the best run clubs, they tend to rise amongst all the, I'm trying to think of the analogy, the dirt, but that's a bit harsh, isn't it? Because I wouldn't describe championship clubs as that. But you get my point. The best run clubs tend to rise to the top
is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, they're the cream. They're the cream amongst this milky beverage that we're talking about here.
Okay.
It's the championship. I think the key thing is how they respond to losing assets. That I think probably inevitably going to lose the likes of Ballymumba, Morgan Whittaker, Mike Cooper, because big clubs are going to come in with big money. It's about replacing those and getting a structure in place to replace those. Steven Schumacher too I imagine might move to a club with lofty ambitions at some point. It's just about replacing those and making sure you stay on track with your plan. Luton have done it. Coventry looked like they were doing it. Brentford have done it. Teams can do it. It's just about sticking to your plan. And clearly got one.
Yeah, well, I think top 6 by 2028. I would happily bet on them to do that because I'm a big fan of clubs which are very smartly run, and we've seen Brighton and Brentford. Look how they're doing in the Premier League now. Luton got there eventually. It's obviously not going too well for them in the Prem, but still, they've got there because they're a very smartly run club. And Plymouth seem to be the next in this kind of heritage of just brilliantly run clubs. And eventually, if you're well run for a consistent period of time, you will get there eventually. I did see Hallett say that one issue is resources, which is understandable, but I mean, look, Luton didn't have massive resources, and if they get money for the likes of Whittaker, Mumba, etc., then they could be swimming in it. It's just about replacing them, and their recruitment has been absolutely spot on over the past couple of years. And that is, I think, recruitment is increasingly becoming the most important thing to get right in football, and that's why Plymouth are just where they are now, a club who I have no worries about getting relegated at all, and are just onwards and upwards in this kind of football pyramid, and will get to the top 6, I'm sure, in the next few years. And I won't rule out the Premier League before the end of the decade. I'm with you on that, Justin. Preston ended a run of 7 games without a win by beating Coventry 3-2. Anthony Taylor was refereeing this one. He was demoted after a controversial penalty in the Newcastle Wolves game last weekend. It's the first time he's refereed at this level since 2019. How about that?
Throwback. Love it. I don't really have an opinion on it. It just been demoted.
Just thought it was interesting, because Anthony Taylor's probably one of the most recognisable referees in English football now, and here he is dipping down to the Championship. Why not? But it's a much needed result for Preston very low, isn't it? Justin, you like your big lumpy strikers, don't you? So I assume you're a big fan of the Montenegrin Milutin Zmajic.
Absolutely, because he took his goal brilliantly. It was an emphatic header. I know the marking wasn't great, but he's settling in well. He's got 5 goal contributors now in 10 games, which is a decent return for someone who's coming into a new country, came quite late in the window as well. So there are big positives there, and we've been crying out for an effective number 9 in this Preston team, and he's playing dividends because they've got a good player on their hands, or what looks like a good player. So yeah, he's a powerhouse. He's got quality. It's just about getting that consistency out of him, and they're slowly doing it, and obviously getting supply into him as well, which is going to help.
Yeah, and I think, is he their club record signing? They definitely spent a fair bit of money on him. So when Preston do that, of all clubs, because Preston are very infamously tight with their purse strings, when they do that, he's got to be a very good player, and I think he is from what I've seen so far. I think Farke Jensen's another one who I've been very impressed with. surprised he hasn't played more really under Ryan Lowe, but that's something that's been a bit contentious among the Preston fan base. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Usmajic from what I've seen so far. He's just a focal point for Preston. 3 goals so far, and think about it, Justin. When was the last great strike? Well, who was the last great striker that Preston had, who they actually owned? Because we've had Archer and Cannon in the past couple of seasons, but I can't remember the last really good hitman that they've had. I mean, Jakobsen, but he always got injured once, and he always used to score in spits and spats, didn't he? Really?
Yeah. Neil Mellor, Kevin Davis was there.
Gosh,
Joe
you're going
Garner,
back a long time now, aren't you?
Dave Nugent,
Nugent maybe.
Chris Brown, John Parkin.
I mean, Beckford scored a few goals, didn't he? No, I don't think he did actually.
Yeah, no, in the League One, yes.
Joe Garner.
Joe Garner.
At Championship level, whatever the case, it's been a long time since we've had a consistent hitman for Preston. So Usmajic may be the answer and could write himself into deep delve folklore if he lives up to expectations. Is 4 losses on the bounce now for Coventry. I assume we still think the results will turn soon.
I did see a stat about big chances being missed by strikers. Matty God and Hadji Wright and Eddie Sims were all up there, which tells you of the issues in front of goal. I know Hadji Wright took both his goals relatively well, but he couldn't really miss them because they were open goals. But he's in the right place, which is positive.
Defence wants it, because 3 goals conceded. They were not very good at the back at all, and
no.
I could just see it now. It's April. Coventry are 10 points from safety, and we're still saying they will come good. I promise they will come good.
Positions league tables upside down.
Yeah, it's a false position, I promise you. Oh, please sort it out, Coventry, Jesus. Huddersfield v Watford ended goalless. Kieran's 3-word review was fucking dreadful. This game was appalling, just really, really bad. I rewatched the highlights just to refresh my memory for this, and the only highlight they had for this was Asprilla shooting from a ridiculous angle from outside the box and it being comfortably saved by Nichols in the Huddersfield goal. That's as good as it got in this game. We haven't spoke about the Hornets in a while though, Justin. Do you think they're making progress under Valerie and Ishmael? Unbeaten in 5, but they are drawing a lot, aren't they?
It doesn't feel like it. They've been pretty, I wouldn't say woeful, but what's just before woeful. They've been that since he signed his new deal for whatever reason. It feels like there's a bit of curse on that contract because you expect him to kick on. They haven't. It feels like the intensity has dropped in games. Decisions in games from Ishmael aren't just where they need to be. It's been pretty disappointing. I saw that Louser, Tom Ince and Reece Healey were all on the bench yesterday, which is a surprise because there's three players there who can be the difference maker in games that didn't have a lot going on like this one.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point you made there because they just seem so flat going forwards. I think they've been great defensively. The underlying data has been really promising for them at the back, and I think Wesley Hoyt in particular is an excellent player. Going forwards, though, they are not exciting at all, and it's something that's really got to be sorted out if Watford want to start climbing the table, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon, does it? Swansea 0, Sunderland 0. Swansea were down to 10 men for 2/3 of the game, so a good point for them in the circumstances. It was a very good 0-0 in general, actually, compared to the previous game. Both keepers in great form. And Stoke v Cardiff also ended 0-0. Kieran's 3-word review for Stoke: shaky but solid. Can you be shaky but solid?
Seems a bit like a jelly, I guess, isn't it? You know, if you've got a good jelly, a good sturdy jelly, you can shake it and it wobbles, but it doesn't go anywhere.
What's a good sturdy jelly?
Have you never had a good sturdy jelly before?
No.
Well, you're missing out, Ryan. Come on, get yourself a good sturdy jelly for your dessert this afternoon.
And Liam says sloppy but solid. So kind of the same thing, really, I suppose. Let's do the polls. This is the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter because we want to get their thoughts on everything to do with the Championship. So the first question we asked was this: who would you rather have at your club? Carlos Alcaraz, Jack Clark, Steffi Mavididi, Crescencio Somerville?
That's really hard. That's an impossible question. I mean, they've all got their own qualities, but if I'm basing it on what we're seeing this season, probably Jack Clark.
I'd probably go Somerville. I think Jack Clark's been my player of the season so far, but I think Somerville is probably the better player just on, previous Premier League class.
It fetch you a bigger fee.
And that too. 38% of people said Jack Clark, 34% said Somerville, 17% said Mavididi, 11% said Alcaraz. I think Alcaraz has been a bit hard done by there. Who would you rather have in charge of your club? Joe Edwards, Nathan Jones or Gary Rowett?
Oh, we've had a heated debate on this one already. I'll go Nathan Jones. Actually, I'll go Gary Rowett. I'll fly the flag.
Oh, okay then. That's very out there. 37% of people said Edwards, 35% said Rowett, 28% said Jones.
Really?
And finally, do you like... Well, that's what the public have said just now. I'm not going to argue with the public. They're always right. Debatable. Do you like fireworks is the final question we've asked. Yes, no, or indifferent.
Fireworks can get in the bin, along with Frank Lampard. There's no place for them in the world. Football world. That's quite
I'm not a big fireworks fan either. 41% said no, 35% said yes, 24% said indifferent. So there you go. And now it's time for this.
Hi, Simon Grayson here.
Yes, it's time for Simon Grayson's Hateful 8. So Justin's going to ask me to name 8 of a certain subject. All I've got to do is name all 8. So, for example, if I were to say name Steve Bruce's last 8 clubs, I would say Villa, that's 1 down, Newcastle, another down. But if I would say Weymouth, I would lose a life. So all I need to do is get all 8 answers without losing all more lives. Justin, how many lives am I getting?
You're going to get 3.
3. Generous. And what's the question?
The question is topical. David Wagner's on the cusp of losing his job at Norwich City, potentially. So I want you to name Norwich City's last 8 managers, permanent managers.
We've done this a lot recently, and we're just picking a random club and asking for the last 8 managers.
Yeah,
but I'm all for it.
It's a difficult one.
Last 8 managers, okay. I mean, Daniel Farke was there for ages, but I'll start off with Daniel Farke.
That is correct. He's second in the list.
Are we including David Wagner, are we?
No, but he's second in the list. We're not including David Wagner.
Oh, yeah, Dean Smith. Bloody hell,
Dodoy.
I forgot about him.
There's 2. He's the latest Dean Smith.
Alex Neil.
Correct. He's 3rd in the list.
He's 3rd. Wow. God,
Yeah.
It feels like ages since he was at Norwich.
Goes back to 2015.
Well, Houghton, I'm guessing, must be on there.
Correct. He is 1, 2, 3, 5th in the list.
5th.
Ooh.
Okay. Who's the bloke, the technical director? Because I think he was in permanent charge, but I can't remember his name.
I've said his name today.
I know. I'll come back to him. I can picture his face, but I can't remember his name. Who else was there before Chris Houghton? Oh, God. Was Hoddle there? Feels like that was a long time ago, I think.
He wasn't, but I know your line of thinking.
Oh, Rhoda.
Yes, Glenn Rhoda. He was there. He's last on the list. So that goes back to 2009, I think, 2008.
So I've lost a life. 2008, he was there. So Paul Lambert's been in charge since then.
Correct. He's just before Houghton, so he's 6th on the list. So you've got 2 remaining. Difficult.
I cannot recall what that bloke's name is. The technical director. He wasn't there.
Do you want a clue? He sounds like a HR director.
No, I'm not sure I'm going to get this. Who was the other one? He was between Rhoda and Lambert, was he?
Yeah.
Brian Gunn?
You've got it. Yeah.
Is that right?
Brian Gunn. Yeah. That's
and
a
then
shout.
It's just the last bloke, is it?
It's just the
HR
last one that
director.
I've said today, and if you get him, it's a really good go because that was a tough list. That goes back to 2008. These managers do. You've got 2 lives remaining.
I know, but I just cannot remember his name. When you say it, I will kick myself.
Yeah, you will.
I saw him on the telly earlier when I was watching the game.
We want to hear the thump of you kicking yourself, by the way. Everybody does.
I don't think I'll kick myself that hard. It would just be a disappointed sigh. Go on, Justin, just put me out of my misery.
Just say names, because I reckon you could get it if you just say names.
Philip Masterson.
No, that's incorrect.
David Humperdinck.
Close, but you're wrong.
Donald Copswallop.
You got it.
Have I?
No, unfortunately not. Neil Adams.
Neil Adams. Such a boring name.
HR director. That was a big clue.
I would have never got that. That was hard. Yeah, I think I did well there to get 7, to be quite honest. So I'll take 7 because I would have never remembered Neil Adams
That's a good effort. That was a tough
Thank
list.
you.
A really
I
tough
appreciate it. But there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's been Simon Grayson's Hateful 8. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. We'll be back again on Thursday to talk about all the latest news in the Championship. We've got Ipswich v Rotherham as well in midweek, which is a rearranged game from a couple of weeks ago, so we'll talk about that as well, and some previews of next weekend's games too. If you wouldn't mind taking a couple of seconds of your time just to give us a 5-star review on whichever platform you listen to us on, it helps us go a long way to grow as a podcast, and we will be eternally grateful for that. So this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.